bring this down. Okay. Okay, and then share the screen. Okay, so we are still in doing the perceptions that lead to the deathless. And what we've covered so far and so the first time we did the asubha sanya, the perception of unattractiveness, the unattractive nature of the body. Then we did, and we could see that that occurs in these four groups. This occurs twice. Then we did the perception of death, which occurs three times. And then we did the perception of danger, the danger and the nature of samsara, which occurs once. And then last week we did the perception of impermanence, which occurs three times. And now today we'll be doing the perception of non-self, which occurs twice in two groups. One group is said to culminate in the deathless, and the second group is said to lead to liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom. Basically the same goal, just in different terms. Okay, so we are doing the perception of non-self, and I'm not going to do a theoretical explanation of anatta. That requires like a full class, but we just will look at some of the texts on the perception of non-self. So I'm going to do a different sharing or share a different screen. Hmm. Okay. Okay, do you have the screen, the file that begins with the Giri Mananda Sutta?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay. Okay, so this is maybe the classical source for the perception of non-self, the Giri Mananda Sutta, where the Buddha is speaking to Ananda. He says, what is the perception of non-self? Then the monk, having gone to the forest and so on, reflects thus. And then he does this by way of the 12 sense bases. The eye is not self, visible forms are not self, and so on for the ear, nose, tongue, body. The mind is not self, and mental phenomena or mental objects are not self. So that is how one dwells contemplating non-self in the six inner sense bases, the six sense faculties, and the six external sense bases, their respective objects. But one could also do the contemplation of non-self by way of the five aggregates. And in fact, that's the way I prefer. So here we have, there's actually a whole bunch of suttas in the Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 22 on contemplation of non-self. So here the simplest, most succinct way, you simply contemplate bodily form is non-self, feeling is non-self, perception is non-self, volitional formations or volitional activities are non-self, and consciousness is non-self. So those are the five aggregates. So when we speak about the person, the individual, from the Buddha's sort of philosophical point of view, we look at the person, the individual, as an assemblage, a sort of functionally unified assemblage of these five factors or groups of factors. And we can sort of look at each one individually in this assemblage, and we see that none of them can be taken as being a self. And now it's what is meant by the self that's rejected by the teaching of anatta. It's not rejecting our functioning personalities, our individual identities, but rather what it's rejecting is the idea really rooted in the Indian way of thinking of the atta, or in Sanskrit, atma. That is I call this a substantial or persistent, enduring basis for individual identity, some core of selfhood that retains its identity through the changing process of experience. And so this self would be the person who experiences the different objects remaining the same, and the person who initiates actions. And so, what the Buddha says is that experience is this integrated functioning of these five factors: bodily form, the body, and then there's the feeling tone, the tone of experience, which is feeling. And Vedana here is not emotion, so the word feeling is a little ambiguous in English, but it is the tone of experience as being pleasant, painful, or neutral. Then perception or ideation, the way we perceive the sense objects and then identify them, conceptualize them, classify them, organize them. And then there's volitional formations, volitional activities, the way we respond to the objects of experience, the factors responsible for action, for activities. You could say intention, purpose, desire, volition, initiative, instigation, and so forth. And then there's the basic awareness of what is happening, which is we call consciousness. So we have these five aggregates, and from the Buddha's perspective, they function together as this integrated whole, and out of their integrated co-functioning, there arises the appearance of an I, that is, the I in this sense, not the eye as the organ of vision. There arises the appearance of an I behind the experience or within the experience that can then be identified, either identified with some element of experience or seen as the persisting subject behind the experience. So, according to the Buddha's teaching, is this idea of the self, of a truly existing I, that is the root of all the afflictive emotions: greed, hatred, jealousy, envy, conceit, vanity, and so on. And it's also this idea of this clinging or grasping to the notion of self that is the driving force behind the cycle of birth and death, samsara. And so the ultimate goal of Buddha's practice is to uproot the notion of the Atman, the self, or the I. And then in the text, we meet some standard, this is a kind of standard argument. I call this an argument in brackets because the Buddha is not arguing with anybody, but he's developing a line of reflection for seeing into the non-self nature of the five, in this case, the five aggregates. So he starts off with his bodily form, the body, permanent or impermanent? Of course, it's impermanent. And then is what is impermanent, we could say a basis for suffering or happiness. And it's a basis for suffering because if we cling to it, then when the body changes, it brings suffering. And so what is impermanent, the basis for suffering and subject to change, can that be validly regarded as this is mine, this I am, this is myself? Then the answer is no. And then the same line of reflection is applied to the other four aggregates, even to feeling, perception, volitional activities, and even consciousness, the most fundamental awareness that arises and shines out through the six senses. Even consciousness is non-self. And so therefore, all bodily form, feeling, perception, volitional activities, consciousness, whatever, past, present, or future, and so on, it's all to be seen with correct wisdom. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. So this is leading into the direct insight into the non-self nature of the five aggregates. And that leads to disenchantment, dispassion, and liberation. And then we have a sutta which illustrates the non-self nature of the five aggregates in terms of similes. So material form is said to be like a lump of foam. The lump of foam appears solid, substantial, but if you investigate the lump of foam, you pick it up and you think it's something hard and solid, but then you sort of press with your hand, the lump of foam just collapses. And that is like material form. In fact, this is even sort of, you could say it's substantiated by modern science, modern physics, since I take something like a cup like this, it looks very hard and solid, but the scientists will tell us that it's made up of molecules, and the molecules are made up of atoms, and the atoms are made up of subatomic particles, which are maybe 95% just empty space. Okay, then feeling is like a water bubble. It's actually like a whole, like a pool with the rain falling down, and water bubbles are constantly arising on the surface of the water. So the water bubbles arise and break up immediately. So that is like feeling, because feeling is always just arising and breaking up, one feeling after another after another. Perception is like a mirage because the things that we perceive are in a way constructed by our senses so they don't conform to the actual nature of things. Like to go back to the cup, like the cup is a projection of my perception. So I label this a cup and use it as a cup for drinking. But maybe it works better with a book. Okay, so the book I regard as a book, maybe for reading. But when I was in Sri Lanka, we had the bookcase up against the wall, and every once in a while, a army of termites would find little holes in the wall and come through and start eating the paper of the books. And so for us, the book is what we call a book is something to read and to study. For the termites, they have their perception. They perceive it as a good meal. So what is it? Is it a book or a meal? That depends on our perceptual apparatus. We see it as a book. Termites see it as a good as food. Um, and it was books on Buddhism, maybe. So we see it as sacred scripture. Say if one of these maybe fanatical Christian evangelicals come and they look at it and they see it's a book of heresy, put it in the fire and burn it. So perception, so what you see, what you perceive, perception is like a mirage, no substantial nature there. Volitions are like a plantain trunk. I don't know if you haven't lived in Southeast Asia or South Asia, you might not have experience with the banana trunk, but it's just coil wrapping coil wrapping coil. And if you want to get the core of it, the hardwood, you pull off one layer and there's just another layer underneath. You remove that, remove that, remove that, until when you remove the last coil, there's nothing there. Or it's like an onion. You just take apart the onion and one layer after another, and there's no pit, no stone at the middle. So that's like volitions, and consciousness is like an illusion. So all of these five aggregates are sort of hollow and insubstantial. Yeah, so it appears but hollow and void. And it's this teaching of non-self, which is sort of the gateway to emptiness. So in this sutta, the Buddha is, Ananda asked the Buddha, how can we say that the world is empty? And the Buddha says it's empty of a self and of anything belonging to a self. And what is it that's empty? The eye and forms, the ear and sounds, and so on. So everything is empty of a self and of what belongs to a self. Okay, so that's enough maybe for theoretical explanation. So let us now go into the actual meditation. And we shouldn't think that we're going to be developing the really deep insight into anatta, but we're trying to develop just some perception to get some idea of this, the meaning of this teaching of non-self through direct experience. And so you can take a firm but relaxed sitting position as usual. And we'll do maybe about 5 minutes simply of mindfulness of breathing to settle the mind. And then I'll do this as a guided meditation. Okay, but first on your own, you know how to do mindfulness of breathing. For this, we don't need the recording, so I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, so now we're going to be developing the perception of anatta, the perception of non-self, and we'll be using the five aggregates as the basis. And so we begin with material form or bodily form. And so first you bring to mind, or you try to get what I call the global experience of the body. That is taking in a full, complete experience of the body in the sitting position. And you might try doing some scans, sweeping the attention down from the top of the head, down through the whole body, down through the legs to the feet. Do a few scans and then come back to the body in the sitting position and take in the entire body. And then we simply stamp onto this body the perception or the idea, this body is not mine, not I, not myself. And you could use some reflection in order to substantiate that idea. For example, you can reflect that this body is formed out of a particular genetic code, and you inherit those genes from your parents, your mother and father, and they inherit the genes from their parents, and so on through generation upon generation, all the ways down to the beginning of life on earth. So this body is the product of the genetic code, which is the product of billions of years of evolution. And then at present, this body has no capacity, no complete autonomy, no capacity for self subsistence, but it depends every day on the intake of food, water, air, appropriate climate conditions. And within this body, according to contemporary biologists, there are billions of organisms, which in fact so many of the bodily processes depend upon these microorganisms that live within the body. But we don't have to use a lot of reflection. The best way is simply to dive in directly and just stamp on the body the perception: this body is not mine, not I, not myself. Now just keep on doing that on your own for a couple of minutes. Don't have to reflect on a lot of subsidiary themes, but just keep on looking into the notion: not mine, not I, and not myself. Okay, then we can take now next, we bring up feeling. And feeling is the felt tone of experience, the felt quality of experience. And so to bring up feeling, it's probably easiest to begin with. We usually distinguish bodily feeling or physical feeling and mental feeling. And it's easiest to begin with the bodily feeling. So what you might do to start with, you could take the feeling of your your buttocks pressing against the seat. That's a bodily feeling. And if you pay careful attention, you'll see that there's feeling in the left buttock, feeling in the right buttock. The sensation of pressure. then you can take the feeling maybe of the knees against the mat, if you're sitting on a mat, or any other pressure points where you could pick up some sensation. And then spread the feeling, the felt feeling, throughout the whole body. And see that the feeling is constantly changing. So it's arising and passing away. And because it's arising and passing, it cannot be taken as a self. And so you apply that stamp, that feeling is not mine. It's just an experience that occurs through conditions. In this case, through the pressure of the body against the seat, or the pressure of the body upon some other objects. So the feeling is not mine, not I, not myself. Okay, next we come to the aggregate of perception. And usually the texts distinguish perception through visible objects, perception of sounds, odors, tastes, tactile objects, and perception of mental objects. And so here we'll be concerned mainly with perception of mental objects, or we could say ideas. And so you can watch the stream of ideas or thoughts arising and passing in the mind. And you just let them flow on, arising and passing. All of them probably involve some element of interpreting, figuring things out, constructing, construing. So all of these perceptions, you just consider that they are just acts of perception or just ideas arising and passing. And so they're not mine, not I, not myself. Do this on your own now for a couple of minutes, not focusing on one particular thing, but just let the ideas or thoughts stream through the mind and just keep on coming back to them, stamping them as not mine, not I, not myself. Okay, next we come to the aggregate of sankharas. This is what I translate now as volitional activities. So these are the sort of volitions, the intentions, the purposes, the motivations to do things that arise in the mind, all of the plans, you could say, to do this, to do that. And so those are just, from our Buddhist point of view, just individual acts of volition. They're not the activities of a self, but just momentary, transient acts of volition that arise and maybe perform their function and then pass away. So we should break the identification. It's usually that those acts of volition that are maybe most responsible for creating the illusion of the self. The self is the doer, the actor, the one who accomplishes things. And so we have to look into our volitions and just see them as momentary acts. arising, functioning, and passing. And so they're not mine, not I, not myself. And so in this case, you take the volition of keeping your body straight and upright and of attending to the meditation object, attending to the stream of experience, and just watch those volitions as they occur in the mind, just arising, breaking up, and vanishing, and stamping them all with the idea volitional activities. These are not mine, not I, not myself. Okay, then finally we come to consciousness, the fifth aggregate. And consciousness we could understand as the bare awareness that arises through each of the sense faculties. Eye consciousness is the awareness that arises based on the eye. Ear consciousness, the awareness that shines out through the ears, picking up sounds, and so on. Body consciousness, the consciousness that's diffused throughout the body, through which we could pick up textures, tactile sensations. And the mind consciousness is the awareness that illuminates the inner world of ideas and thoughts, reflections, and so on. So consciousness is the most difficult of the aggregates to discern, But still, you could try to sort of reflect the beam of awareness back upon itself and just keep on stamping the awareness with the idea, this is not mine, I am not this, this is not myself. Okay, now we're going to go just quickly through the five aggregates, applying the idea of non-self to each of them. So first, bodily form, not mine, not I, not myself. Feeling, sensations, moods, not mine, not I, not myself. The aggregate of perceptions, that is, ideas, concept formation, not mine, not I, not myself. volitional activities, that is, intentions, purposes, aims, desires, all of them not mine, not I, not myself. Then consciousness, the awareness shining out through the six senses, is not mine, not I, not myself, but it is just the light of awareness illuminating objects through the senses. And then we bring all of the five aggregates together. So we take the entire assemblage now of the bodily form together with the four mental aggregates, take them all together, and we apply to this entire assemblage the notion these five aggregates are not mine, not I, not myself. Okay, now come back to your breath. Take a couple of mindful breaths in and out, in and out. And then you can open your eyes and end the session the usual way. Okay, don't forget in the evening you'll have opportunity to ask questions or raise up issues in this practice. For now, we'll just go on with the practice. Okay, now we're going to have a period of walking meditation, but here I'm going to give a different method of doing the walking meditation. So let me just get a little water. Now, this is the way we do the walking meditation. We're not going to be distinguishing phases in the walking, but rather you start off at this beginning point for the walking. Now, what you want to note before taking the right step, you note the intention in the mind. You'll see before you take a step, first there arises the intention. I'm going to take the right step. Then the body takes the right step. So you become mindful of the intention, then mindful of the physical step, right step. Then similarly with the left step, mindful first, you recognize the intention. I'm going to take you don't have to formulate it verbally like that, but you note the intention, left step. Then you note the left step itself. And so in this way, you go down the walkway, each time noting the intention to take the step and then the physical step itself. When you get to the end of the walkway, you note the intention, stopping, I'm going to stop. Then you note the physical act of stopping. Then you note the intention to turn around. And then actually, the turning usually takes several steps. So you note each intention to turn, let's say 3 times, 3 steps to turn around. So you note the intention, turn, then the turning, second intention, turn, then the act of turning, then the third intention, turn, then you turn, then you're standing, you note standing, standing, then going back, again, you note the intention, take right step, then the right step itself, then the intention, left step, then the left step itself, and so until you get to the beginning point. And again, intention to stop, act of stopping, intention to turn one, intention to turn two, intention to turn three, then you're stopping, then intention to take right step, left step, right step. So in this way, you're seeing the entire process of a succession of intentions and physical bodily actions. Any questions about that? Any practical question? Okay, so let us then just go to our walkway and do the actual walking. Yeah, we'll do this about 20 minutes, and we'll come back to our seats. The purpose of doing the walking meditation in this way is to show how even a simple act like the act of walking involves this interplay of the five aggregates. And in this case, we're taking the aggregate of bodily form, which is what does the walking, and the aggregate of, in this case, the volitional activities, the intention. And so an act of walking is this interplay of intention, which is a mental act, and the bodily movement, which is, of course, a physical act. And so this can be developed when you do this repeatedly over a long time, an extended time, particularly in this retreat situation where you're doing it day after day, you get to the point where you get very, very minute perceptions of the interplay of intention and movement, even to the point that it seems just like when you have a movie made up of successive frames. And so you see the hero, I don't know, rescuing his beloved from a burning building. It's all playing out very quickly. But then when you look at the film itself, you see that there are a succession of different frames. And so when you do this, like the walking meditation, as I said, over an extended time, you start to see how even the act of walking is a series of successive frames of involving the interplay of intention and movement. Okay, we're going to now resume our sitting meditation, the sitting meditation in which we develop the perception of non-self. The anatta sanya in relation to the five aggregates. And so first settle the mind. We do just a couple of minutes of silent mindfulness of breathing. Okay, so now we will be going through another round of the developing the perception of non-self using the five aggregates as the base or foundation. So first, get a what I call the global awareness of the whole body in the sitting position, sitting posture. You could sweep through the body a few times from top to bottom, head to feet. And then come back to the total simultaneous pervasive awareness of the whole body. And so now directly, without using a lot of secondary reasoning and reflection, but just directly sink the idea into the body. This body is not mine. It is not I. It is not myself. Just do that. Do that now on your own. You could go through those three phrases, three ideas, and watch particularly the way the attachment or grasping of the body loosens up as you perceive or discern the body by way of not mine, not I, not self. You can see that the body is just like a lump of foam, cells made up of molecules, made up of atoms, made up of subatomic particles, mostly empty space. Okay, then we move to the aggregate of feeling, Vedana. And so it's easiest to begin with the bodily sensations. So you just start off attending to the bodily sensations and see that all of these bodily sensations are not mine, not I, not myself. Then you can look for any kind of mental feelings like either sadness or gladness, sadness or joy, and see that those mental feelings too are just like bubbles that arise and burst, moments of mental feeling. Not mine, not I, not myself. Okay, then we move now to the aggregate of perception, which we take in the form now of ideas, the mental perceptions. So just let the ideas or thought formations stream through the mind and just apply to all of them the notions not mine, not I, not myself, letting go of them as they arise. And now we shift to the volitional formations, the volitional activities. So now you'll be looking in your mind stream, looking for the arising of intentions, plans, even the intention of keeping your focus on the mind stream itself, or the intention of keeping the body straight and upright, or any ideas about projects, plans that you have for the future. All of those you regard as volitional activities, and just stamp them with the notions not mine, not I, not myself. Okay, and now we turn to the subtlest of the five aggregates. This is the aggregate of consciousness, the awareness arising through any of these senses. And since we're closing off our senses to other objects, it will be the manovinyana, the consciousness that arises through the mind faculty, the awareness of the mental objects. And so you contemplate now consciousness as not mine, not I, not myself. Just as you're contemplating, keep on letting go and sort of relaxing and settling in to the selfless consciousness. Okay, now we take the entire complex or the assemblage of the five aggregates, taking them all together simultaneously, and we apply to them again the same notions. This is not mine. I am not this. This is not myself. Okay, now I'm going to connect the contemplation of non-self with this would be the recollection of the deathless. And so these five aggregates, which are not self, are disintegrating, breaking up, and fading away, falling away, moment after moment. Nibbana, the unconditioned, is not disintegrating. The five aggregates are unstable. Nibbana, the unconditioned, is stable, everlasting. The five aggregates are subject to affliction. Nibbana, the deathless, is the unafflicted. The five aggregates are subject to old age. Nibbana is the unaging. The five aggregates are subject to death. Nibbana is the deathless. The five aggregates are the near shore of defilement and bondage. Nibbana is the far shore of purity, freedom, and peace. The five aggregates are unreliable. Nibbana is the island of safety, the shelter, the ultimate refuge. Okay, then you come back to your body in the sitting position. And back to the breath. You take a couple of mindful breaths in and out, in and out. And then as you can open your eyes, and as usual, we end the session. We end the session in the usual way. Okay, so that takes care of the afternoon session here. And we'll have another session in the evening. And at the end of the evening session, then we'll do the dedication of the merits. So just to end, we could do 3 bows to the triple gem, to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the noble Sangha.